Well, we've come to the summation of my summer with what God was telling me, the wrestling that I did, the repentance that happened. So we're wrapping it up this week. And I hope that this has helped you as well as it helped me this summer. And I really, truly hope that you're willing to be honest and take this journey about your walk and where you need to be in discipleship, and about where the status of your first love is, the priority. So, just to review, last week I discovered that discipleship has a high cost of choosing not to believe the excuses that go on in our minds and to serve. One of the biggest stumbling blocks is the excuses that we use not to serve. We justify. I call it a false righteousness. We justify to ourselves, so we satisfy the mind and quench the spirit on not following our one true love. Our love relationship with the Father must be first in our lives. It's just that simple. It's not rocket science, it's just Scripture. And that's all areas of our life. As humans, we have a tendency to compartmentalize and putting things in order, and it's a great gift if you have that order of organization, a gift of organization. But we must strive to allow God to bleed into all areas of our lives. He's got to bleed into our personal walk. He's got to bleed into our family time. He's got to be able to bleed into your work time. God has to reign first. And when we compartmentalize, even though it's nice and neat, and it's easy and it gives us the illusion to handle things, we put God in a box and we stop that first love. So our lives must be wide open to God. He must have full reign and full total control in everything that he tells us to do. So realizing all this, it left me with one question, and that was, what now? Now that you've shown me the error of my ways and what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ through discipleship, what now? God directed me to the Great Commission, Matthew 28:16 through 20. I've read the Great Commission, I've lived the Great Commission, I try to strive for the Great Commission. So I didn't understand what he was trying to teach me. I know the Great Commission is what I told him, and I strive for it. Again, I was encouraged to give him a resume of all the things that we did to fill the Great Commission. And then God spoke to me and he hit me with this. It is impossible to complete the Great Commission without the right relationship with God first. I'll say it again because it's really the phrase of the day. It is impossible to complete the task of the Great Commission without the right relationship with God first in your life. So I thought about that, I meditated and I prayed on it, and I still wasn't getting it. And then he showed me what he's talking about, the right relationship when it comes to the Great Commission. So I'm going to give you the 3 points on what I learned from that encounter. The first point is your first love. Everything begins with the right relationship of your first love, because it creates our humility. And being humble is key in serving your Lord. It reminds you that you have a master, someone that you answer to, someone that you are trying to please, and someone that you're willing to surrender your will to. Keeping God's love relationship first in your life is a priority. It has to be the first priority of your life. When you get up in the morning and your everyday walk, it should be a priority to put God's love relationship first. That means it's forefront in your mind. That means there's time in the morning for God. Throughout your decisions throughout the day, The love relationship should be reflected in everything that you do. Now, let me say this. If you're willing to make that love relationship with God a priority in your life, you're going to have to travel the path of sacrifice. Nobody likes to hear that, but it's true. Think about it. If you have a master, if God is first and you want to please Him, to do His will, you're going to have to die to self to do it. You're going to have to walk the path of sacrifice. And that's where the big disconnect with some Christians are today. They're not willing to walk the path of sacrifice to make that love relationship a priority. They're not willing to die to self. They're not willing to give up their rights. They're not willing to give up their will. They're not willing to give up the things that they want for the sacrifice to keep God's love a priority. But there is no other way. If you choose to be a disciple of Jesus Christ and die to self and make your love relationship with the Father a priority, you must choose to walk the path of sacrifice. John 14:21 says, "The one who has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. And the one who loves me will be loved by my Father. I also will love him and reveal myself to him." Now let's just, before I give you an example of what I'm talking about, let's just study this verse for a minute. The one who has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. This is a direct reflection of that priority of your relationship with God. The love relationship with God must be first in your life, because those who keep my commands, that are willing to walk the path of sacrifice to keep my commands, He is the one who loves me. So we see that if we want our love relationship with God to be a priority, that we are commanded to obey. And in doing so, that with that action, we show that we love our Lord more than anything, because we're willing to walk that path of sacrifice. Now, the one who loves me will be loved by my Father, which shows us that God blesses those who serve Him. If you are willing to walk that path of sacrifice, God is willing to bless your life. He will give you the blessings of what you need. Now move on. It says, "And I will also love him and reveal myself to him." The third part of this verse that I want you to see is that when you walk the path of sacrifice, there will be trials. There will be temptations. There will be dying to self on this path. It is not an easy path. But Jesus says, if you're willing to take that step by faith and keep your love relationship with the Father first in your life, then I'm willing to reveal myself. Now, all of us have experienced it. We might not think about it or not, but when you're going through a trial and tribulation and all of a sudden something appears, that's Jesus revealing himself. When you're going through your strife and the hardest times and some sort of thing that's going on in your life and you're praying about it, and all of a sudden God gives you that comfort, Jesus is revealing himself to you. So all these things, these blessings and God, Jesus revealing himself, come as a result of your willingness to walk the path of sacrifice to keep your love relationship with the Father a priority. Say amen if you're following me so far. Amen. Okay, because I hate to lose anybody. Let me give you that example that I promised you. Now watch this. Pay close attention. Nothing up my sleeves. When Peter was at the Last Supper, Jesus made a statement. He said, someone's going to betray me tonight. And the disciples are going, is it me? Is it me? Everybody's in doubt, except for one. Peter, who stands up and loud as he can says, they may all do it, but not me. Not me. I'm not going to do it. Jesus says, before the cock crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. Not me. No. So what I want you to see here is that Peter's foundation for his basis of his love relationship with God was his ego, was his personal abilities. When you base your love relationship with God as a priority on your being able to do it, to handle it, it fails. Peter denied him 3 times before the cock crowed. His abilities, his will, his strength was not able to walk the path of sacrifice to say, yes, I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. He could not and was not willing to walk the path of sacrifice to keep his love relationship first with the Father. All right, moving forward, we see that Jesus comes and sees them after the crucifixion on the beach, and he's talking with Peter. He says, Peter, do you love me? And he does it 3 times. Do you love me? Well, yes, Lord, I love you. First time. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. Second time. And every time after that, it was service. Being able to walk the path of sacrifice. Third time. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. You've asked me 3 times. He says, then you're going to die for me. You're going to have to walk the path of sacrifice. You're going to have to say, yes, I'm a disciple of the Father, and I will keep that priority first, all the way to death, the path of sacrifice. You can't do it like you did the first time, Peter. You're going to have to walk the path of sacrifice. And what Jesus effectively did is that he switched out the foundation that Peter relied and based his love for the Father on ego and self to selflessness and sacrifice. He says, if you're going to keep the love for me a priority in your life, then you're going to walk the path of sacrifice, and for Peter's case, all the way to death. Moving forward, they're in the upper room. They got the door locked. Peter's saying, count how many believers there is out there. A little nervous about the mob mentality. Peter walks out and preaches on the day of Pentecost. 3,000 plus are converted. He effectively starts the New Testament church. Why? Because he was willing to walk the path of sacrifice to make God's love a priority and to serve God no matter what it cost him at that time. Could he have done it on his own? We see that he can't do it on his own. He has to base his foundation of his love for the Father on the abilities to sacrifice and die to self. He's willing to do that, and he receives the power in the New Testament church is born. So what I'm telling you, and what God taught me, is that you need to make sure the foundation on which you anchor your walk to is not one of self-abilities. It's not one of pleasing self, but it is one of realizing and understanding that you have a master and that you're bought and paid for, and that you will sacrifice for him if you're going to make the priority of loving your Father first. Say amen if you follow. Amen. Say amen if you agree. Amen. Wow, okay, well, we're doing pretty good today. The pastor is our friend, that's absolutely right. So let's go to the second point. Reading John for power and service. Reading John 14, 12 through 15. I assure you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and he will do even greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. This is a reflection in verse 12 of the relationship that we have just been talking about. And that relationship, when correct, produces power and prayer. Now understand this. This is an absolute. If God is a priority and first in the love relationship of your life, it produces prayer. Period. End of sentence. There's never been a case in my 30 years where that's not happened. When people come to me and they're having troubles and they need some pastoral care, the first question I usually ask them is, how's your prayer life? Because that gives me an indication if God is love relationship is priority number one in your life. And I can tell you, unless they're fibbing to me, I can tell you that their love, or their power and their prayer life is absolutely zero or nil. Which means God is not first in their lives. The love relationship cannot be first in your life and you not produce prayer. It's impossible. When I had a ministry of interim pastorship and I would go into churches and fill the void between the two pastors. Excuse me. By the way, that ministry is a sacrificial lamb ministry. And that means you go in, see what's wrong, and fix it. They'll hate you. They'll hate you. And they'll hurry up and get them a new pastor. But you get to fix things. So you become the fastest sacrificial lamb. When I walked into a church, the first thing that I did was take a reading on the church's prayer life. If the church's prayer life is nil, that means that the church has lost its first love. And if the church has lost its first love, we have already studied that it's not where we need to be. They could be the biggest church in the world. They could have the most ministries in the world. They could give the most money to ministries. But it's not successful if they don't have their first love. If God is your first love and He is a priority in your life, you will produce prayer. Prayer produces power. Now there are three things that you need to produce power in your prayer. I'm going to give these to you for free, no extra charge. You want to write them down. If you don't, well, that's your fault. Here we go. Ready? Number one. The first thing that you need to have a powerful prayer life is you need that love relationship to be first. Now, that seems common sense, but I found that sense isn't common anymore. You have to have that first relationship, which creates humility. And with humility, we create the second thing, and that's a non-tainted motivation for prayer. Let me explain what I'm talking about. If someone in your family immediately is in an accident or gets sick and they're rushed to the hospital, you go to prayer. And you pray for their well-being, their health, they're all right, that they get better. I'm not blaming you for that. I do the same thing. Because that's humanity in me, human in me, the nature. But it's sort of, if you agree with me, it's sort of tainted, isn't it? The motivation is tainted. You want your loved one better. Not once does it come into your mind to pray, Lord, your will be done for my family member who was just in this accident. It's, Lord, touch them, make them better. When your love relationship with the Father is intact and He is a priority, you have the ability to remove the taint from your prayer and actually pray for God's will. Great example is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. We all know it. Where Jesus is saying, Lord, if there's any way you could take this cup from me. I really, truly, humanly don't want to do this. But if not, your will be done. Jesus' prayer was not tainted. He was expressing his emotions. But at the end, you see that he wanted the Father's will to be done. And you see with that ability of not untainted prayer that he got the power to finish what he needed to do, to die on the cross for our sins. When we have a loved one dying and we continue to pray, Lord, just make them better, keep them here, it's a self-prayer, I understand that. But when you can get to the point where you see your loved one the way they are and say, Lord, your will be done, take them up that as your will. When you can change from your selfishness to a selfless prayer, when you can purify your prayer for God's will to be done, even though it would kill you to see it happen. There's power in that kind of prayer. And the third thing that you need is a glorification of the Father. The prayer must glorify the Father. Great examples in John chapter 9. When Jesus is walking by and there's a blind man who's been blind by birth, from birth. And they continue to say, well, he's blind because he's paying for his father's sins. Something that has happened before. And that's why he's blind. And then Jesus comes up to him and he heals the blind man. And he tells them, it's because this glorifies the Father. Everybody knew this man was blind from birth. But because of the power, you get to see the glorification of the Father for him to see again. God was using that man, even though he had to live up to that point blind. He was using that man for the glorification of the Father. When we can say, Lord, use me in the way that you see fit for the glorification of the Father, even if it means I have to suffer through it, your will be done. And when you can do that, there's power in prayer. And then you're going to see Jesus reveal himself to you. As you go through the trial and the temptation, as you go through whatever it is you're going through, and God brings you on the other side because of your faith and the strength in your love relationship with him, it is a testimony. There's power in prayer. Psalms 96:3 says, declare his glory among the nations, his wonderful works among all people. Now, we talked about these first two to get to the Great Commission. You need to understand that priority of your love relationship with the Father must be first, and it is a path of sacrifice that you walk. And you also see that if you are willing to do that and walk that path of sacrifice, it creates a powerful prayer life. With those three things that we just went through, you can get through anything using God's power. That's what we find in John 14:12-15. That's where you get the power. Now you're going to need all that to be successful in completing the Great Commission. Why? Because if you haven't noticed out there, people are really nasty towards Jesus. They've turned away from him and they don't want him telling them what they have to do. People are living their lives in sin and they're saying that it's okay. Society is saying it's okay. And when you stand against them to show the love and make disciples, teaching them about God's commands, a lot of people are not going to care for it. And there's a lot of times you're not going to be treated right. Our third point, missions. There are three great elements for missions. That finger did not want to, yeah, there we go. That finger did not want to cooperate. There are three great elements for missions. The first great is, of course, the Great Commission. You'll find in Matthew 28:16-20 as I read it. And the 11 disciples traveled to Galilee to the mountain where Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped, but some doubted. Then Jesus came near and said to them, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, to the end of age. We are commanded to spread the good news. We're commanded to make disciples. We're commanded to teach those folks that become believers. God's word. We are commanded to do this until the end of age. To make disciples, it takes time. It takes a desire. And that desire only comes from the humility or the humbleness that we receive because God is our first priority in love. We're used to standing up here for about an hour, today maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and spreading the good news through different methods. But are you willing to put that person on your mind and maybe take time out of your week to call, send them a card, encourage them, meet with them, call them on Saturday night, tell them you're praying for them because I know you're having a tough week. I'm praying for you. I'll meet you at Sunday school. Sunday morning we'll sit together. Or let's go get coffee before we go to Sunday school. Let's meet. Let's encourage these folks. That takes time. And that takes the power of putting God first in your life because truly, people's lives are hectic anymore. Busy, running to and fro. There has to be a desire to serve God in all areas of your life. If it means getting up 30 minutes early. You know, I talked to some folks and they said, I wish I had a closer walk with God. And I said, okay, what time do you get up? 6. What time do you got to be at work? 7. Takes me an hour to get ready. Get there. Okay, then get up at 5:30. Spend 30 minutes with God before you start your regular routine. I have trouble getting up at 6. There's not a desire to walk that path of sacrifice. Which tells me if there's not a desire not to walk that path of sacrifice, then their love relationship with God is not the priority in their life. See how this is working? If you're willing to do the things necessary to make the disciples and fulfill the Great Commission, your walk with the Father, your love relationship with the Father has to be first and has to be the priority. That's what God was telling me here. You can't complete the Great Commission without that relationship first. Because the path of sacrifice must be walked. And the only way that we walk that path is to make sure that God is priority and forefront in our lives. So it's all starting to make sense to me. We can take a stab at the Great Commission. We can go out and do rolling revivals. We could go out and feed them hot dogs and hand them tracts at Halloween time. We could go out and do these things. But if we're not willing to follow up with what we do, then you're creating babes into a world full of wolves. See, Great Commission is not only creating the babes or getting them the light so that they can make that decision, but it's also growing them to be an adult, to be productive as a Christian. It's one thing, it's great when you have a revival and there's 15 people saved that week. That's fantastic. But what is the discipleship making plan for them afterwards? Well, I don't know. If they come to church, we'll see them at church, we'll slap them on the back, tell them we're glad to see them. But as long as it don't take from my week, the time of my week, because I absolutely have no time at all during the week. Absolutely no time at all during the week. Which is telling me that you're not going to make a disciple. You're not willing to walk the path of sacrifice, and you're not willing to complete the Great Commission. You'll start it, but you won't finish it because you're not willing to sacrifice and make that love relationship with the Father first in your life. The second great is the Great Command. See in Matthew 22, 37 through 40. And he said to him, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. To me, that's saying the love relationship must be first and a priority. Imagine that. This is the great and most important command. The second is like to the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. That takes a lot. But if you can love your neighbor as yourself, you know what that produces? It produces grace. What am I talking about? When Jesus was dying on the cross, he looks out and he said, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, he did not say, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do, after they come and apologize and tell me they were wrong for hurting me. After they make it right for saying all the things that they said. After they do this or after they do that. After I'm satisfied that the righteousness for myself has been complete, or I'm going to wait with this root of bitterness until I get an apology. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, forgive them. They know not what they do. He didn't expect an apology. He didn't expect things to get right. But you know what? The great command of love thy neighbor as thyself. He applied the grace and said, forgive them, Lord. It's under the blood. Forgive them, Lord. Because really, they don't know what they're doing, or they wouldn't have done this, because it is out of the ballpark wrong. The moment we place self in that way is the moment we create a root of bitterness. It's the moment we lose our love relationship as a priority in our lives. To serve the Father, to put that relationship first and make it a priority, commands us to give grace. And it doesn't matter if you get your apology. It doesn't matter if you get anything out of the satisfaction. It just matters if the Father is glorified. When you're out there spreading the good news of Jesus Christ and they're saying this about you or they're doing this about you and it's offensive and understood, and you apply that grace, you move on and you keep your love relationship first. But if you don't have that love relationship based on the knowledge that you're going to sacrifice, you're going to walk the path of sacrifice, you will fail in your task because you will allow self to intervene. God's love relationship, drawing from that strength, allows you and creates the ability for you to have a prayer life so powerful that you can get through these things without waiting for your apology. You know, it's fantastic sometimes you go out and I see a brother I ain't seen in a while, say, hey, what's going on, man? First thing they want to do is tell me all the negative stuff of how they've been treated or how somebody's treated them. Why ain't that under the blood? We have to have the ability to apply grace. You do. You don't have that choice. You must apply grace. And the third great is the great compassion. It is the main characteristic of our Lord Jesus Christ, is it not? The compassion that he showed. Mark 6:34 says, so as he stepped ashore, he saw a huge crowd and had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Then he began to teach them many things. There's got to be compassion in your walk. Let me tell you this. You could be the greatest teacher of the scriptures in the world. You could have the biggest handle on it. You could be the absolute perfect guy to teach all the scripture. But if you don't have compassion on some folks who can't keep up or don't have that ability, if you can't find a connection and a relationship with them, you're not going to teach them anything because they're not going to come. If you can't create a relationship because you have compassion for them, if you're not willing to bend a little, if you're not willing to do what it takes to sacrifice from what you think you should be doing so you can create a relationship, you're not going to teach them anything. They're not coming. So how good is your gift then? You could have the fantastic gifts of being a pastor, the shepherd, all the gifts in the world. But if you don't have compassion on the flock for all the mistakes that they're making and all the things that they're doing, if you're not creating a love relationship with your flock, it's going to be worthless because they're not coming to you. They're not following you. Compassion is key. And you draw that strength from your first love either. That kind of compassion only manifests itself through us when we are in the right love relationship with the Father. It's the only time it does. Because you can't pour pure love and compassion and grace out of a heart that's tied up with bitterness. It won't come. A couple weeks ago, I think it was last week, I was flipping through the channels. There's nothing on TV worth watching. Flip through the channels to see if you can find something. And they had this Harry Potter marathon going on. And I flipped it and I stopped and they had this statement. And I'm quoting this statement from Professor Dumbledore. Because even though it was a TV or a character, it doesn't make it any less right. He said, talking to Harry Potter, our abilities doesn't define who we are. Our choices do. And that's absolutely correct. You can have all the abilities in the world, but if you choose not to show grace, if you choose not to show compassion, if you choose not to keep God first in your life, they're worthless. Because nobody is going to listen. Part of discipleship making is creating relationships. And the one key thing in creating a relationship is time. Compassion, and grace. Those are the three key elements. And if you're not willing to take those three and show that to someone that's struggling, or show that to someone that hasn't been here for a while, or to show that to someone on the street, or to show that to a coworker, you're wasting your time. There is no way that you can complete the Great Commission. So let me give you the conclusion. Everybody take a deep breath. Let it out. Hey, I heard that back there. I know who it was. I know who that was. The gospel is God's power to save all who believe. And Jesus calls every one of us, every disciple, to participate in the Great Commission. So, if we're called to participate in the Great Commission, and if we keep the priority first, let me just run through this. God, love priority first. Jesus said if we love him, we'll keep his commands. So that's the command. So we got to keep the Great Commission. How we keep the Great Commission? Our love for the Father must be first, because that's what we draw from. Okay, well, how do we do that? We do that by basing it on selflessness and the willingness to walk the path of sacrifice. If you walk the path of sacrifice, trials and tribulations are going to appear, but Jesus promised that he would reveal himself to us. If I did that in the beginning, I could have saved you about 4 minutes. First, we must be strong in discipleship before you can fulfill the Great Commission. And I will tell you, that's where God is leading me to lead us all this year. You're going to hear more sermons on discipleship later on. You're going to hear, beginning of next month, you're going to hear the plans of some great things that we've got, classes for discipleship, great things that we've got to rediscover our first love. There's a lot of things going on. But if we're going to be successful, to be the light up on the hill for Jesus Christ and fulfill the Great Commission, then we have to put our love relationship with the Father first and prioritize. Which means that we must walk the path of sacrifice. Okay, bow your heads with me if you will. If you're here today and you're a believer in Jesus Christ, we'll get to you in just a minute. If you're here and you're not a believer in Jesus Christ, but you feel that desire to know him, to surrender your life to him, all you must do is say this prayer. You don't have to say it loud, but you do have to mean it. Lord, forgive me of my sins. I'm lost and I need you in my life. Replace my will with yours and I will follow you for an eternity. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Every head's still bowed, every eye's still closed. If you said that prayer through our video ministry, welcome to the family of God. We invite you here to Shine Light Baptist Church, 294 Mount Vernon Avenue, Marion, Ohio, 43302. And tell us about that decision that you made so that we can start you on the path of your discipleship. If you have a home church or a church that you're comfortable with, or a church that your family goes to, we encourage you to go to that pastor and tell them about the decision you made today and allow them to start you on your path. Excuse me. If you're here today and you said that prayer, I just want to ask you 3 simple questions. Just raise your head and look up at me. Pardon me. I have 3 questions for you. Maybe you're here today and you're a believer in Jesus Christ, and maybe you realize that you've slipped. Maybe you realize without knowing it that you begin to refuse to walk the path of sacrifice to keep your love relationship first. Maybe God is showing you things in your life as He showed me in my life this past summer. And if so, I'm excited for you. Just be real to Him and get your life where it needs to be. This altar will be open for you as well. To my left, your right, we'll have prayer warriors standing by to pray with you, counselors to answer the questions that you need. To my right, your left, there will be a spot for you to go to the Father by yourself and reconnect to that love relationship. Our job here is to make your walk stronger when you leave than it was when you walked into this place. We're going to have prayer warriors standing by. If you want someone to pray with you and you don't feel like coming down front, just raise your hand. Now, before I let you raise your heads, I've done this the past couple of weeks, and it's really enriched my prayer life, and I hope that it's helping those. If this message you have received, and you know that you need help in these areas, if you just slip your hands up so I can have a visual, and I'll be praying for you. Amen. I'll be praying for you. 2, 3, 4. Amen. Any more? Amen. 5. Amen. 6. Amen. 7. I'm very proud of your braveness to be faithful and being real in your lives. I will be praying for you this week because I know the path that you're about to seek. I've been through that path, and I know sometimes it's tough, it's rough, and it's hard, but it is definitely worth it. All right, let me raise your heads, look up at me, stand, where it leads us.